Lucas stepped over the broken metal beam and into silence. The abandoned colony was dead. No power, no people, just cold wind and ash. He moved carefully, scanning with his handheld tracker, nothing but static. Then a sound made him freeze. A low growl, soft, but filled with warning. He turned slowly toward the rubble. It had once been a science lab, now just bent walls and crushed equipment. The growl came again, louder, from deep under broken steel. Something was alive in there. Lucas raised his flashlight and moved closer. Dust floated in the air like snow. A small hand furry, clawed, trembling pushed out from beneath the rubble. Then a pair of glowing eyes opened in the dark. "Hello?" Lucas said, voice soft. "I'm here to help." The figure didn't answer. He reached out, brushing debris off the trapped body. What he uncovered made him stop breathing. It was a girl, but not human. Her face was wild and sharp, ears pointed. Like a wolf's, silver hair matted with blood, skin pale with faint stripes. She was injured, her leg pinned under a fallen beam. "I've got you," Lucas whispered. He dropped his pack, grabbed a metal bar, and began prying the beam with a loud creak. It shifted. He reached down and pulled her free. The moment she was out, she lunged. Teeth sank deep into his arm. Pain exploded, fire running through his veins. He screamed and fell back, blood dripping onto the dusty floor. The alien girl collapsed beside him, too weak to move. She tried to growl again, but it came out as a whimper. Then she passed out. Lucas lay on the ground, clutching his arm. The bite mark burned like acid, but he didn't run. Something in her face just before she fainted wasn't hate. It was fear later. As the sun dipped behind the broken skyline, Lucas made a small shelter inside the ruins. He used pieces of old blankets, plastic sheets, and sealed the windows with loose boards. The girl was still out cold, her breathing slow but steady. Lucas sat nearby, watching the fire flicker. The pain in his arm was worse now. He peeled back the bandage only to find something strange. The skin around the bite had turned dark gray, and it was spreading. That night, Lucas had dreams. He ran through a forest that didn't exist, under a sky filled with 3 moons. Strange voices whispered in his mind, calling his name in a language he didn't understand. He saw the alien girl, standing tall with glowing eyes. She said something, then turned into mist. He woke up sweating, the wound pulsing. The girl was awake now, sitting near the fire, watching him. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared, head tilted like an animal studying prey. Lucas slowly raised his hands. "It's okay," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't move then. Very slowly, she reached out and pointed at his arm. Lucas nodded. "Yeah, you bit me." She lowered her ears in shame or regret. He couldn't tell. He passed her a water bottle. She sniffed it, then drank. Her eyes never left his face. They sat like that for hours, 2 broken beings in a broken world. Neither fully trusting the other, but too tired to fight. By morning, Lucas couldn't feel his fingers. The infection, or whatever it was, had reached his elbow, but it didn't feel like any sickness he knew. It felt alive. The girl stood and walked toward him, limping badly. She knelt beside him and placed her clawed hand over the bite. Her eyes glowed bright yellow. Lucas's arm burned and then suddenly cooled. The pain stopped. The darkness on his skin faded. But something else remained. A part of her was now inside him. He could feel it like a second heartbeat. The girl said one word, her voice rough and strange. "Lerna." Lucas blinked. "What does that mean?" She placed a hand on her chest, then on his. "Lerna," she said again. Lucas didn't understand, but deep inside, he felt the words sink into his soul. Something had started here, something bigger than both of them, and it all began with the bite that burned. Asterisk. The morning sky turned dark, not with clouds, but with machines. Black drones floated above the ruins, like silent vultures. They made no sound, but Lucas could feel the tension in the air. The alien girl stood completely still, her eyes locked on the sky. Her fur bristled, lips curled. and claws slid out from her fingers. Lucas followed her gaze. He counted 6 drones, all circling, slowly scanning the ground. His heart sank. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" he whispered. She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. Without a word, she grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the lower levels of the ruins. She moved fast, even with her injured leg. Lucas stumbled after her, through a broken tunnel and into a collapsed lab basement. The walls were cracked, full of wires and old tech, but it was deep and hidden. The girl crouched in the corner, breathing fast. Lucas peered through a crack in the wall. One drone hovered just above them, scanning with a red beam. He held his breath. The beam passed over the rubble and moved on. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the sky grew quiet. The drones were gone. Lucas turned to the girl. "Why are they chasing you?" She stared at him, then pointed to her chest, then to the sky. He shook his head. "I don't understand." She growled in frustration, then reached into the dust and began to draw on the floor. A symbol. It looked like a crescent moon with a claw through it. Then another, a large creature standing on 2 legs, surrounded by smaller ones. She pointed to the big figure, then to herself. Then she scratched all of them out with her claws, except one, the lone figure. Lucas finally understood. "You were part of a pack," he said. "A tribe." She nodded slowly, eyes dark. "And now, you're the only one left." She lowered her head, ears folding back. Lucas felt something heavy in his chest. This wasn't just about survival. This girl was the last of her kind. Suddenly, the tracker in Lucas's bag beeped soft, but sharp. He pulled it out and saw a blinking light. Something nearby was giving off a signal. He followed the signal deeper into the basement. Behind a shattered console, he found a small, cracked tablet alien tech. The screen flickered and showed an image. The same symbol she had drawn, moon and claw. The girl gasped and crawled closer, touching the screen with wide eyes. It played a short hologram, blurry, but clear enough. A group of creatures like her, howling in unison under 3 moons. Then static, then screams, then fire. Lucas looked at her. "You're royalty, aren't you?" She didn't respond, but her silence spoke again. Suddenly, a new light blinked on the screen. The signal had been sent. "Someone's coming," Lucas whispered. "That tablet just called them here." The girl's claws tightened around the device and she crushed it. "Too late," Lucas said. He could already hear the distant sound of engines, louder than drones. This time, it was a ship. They rushed back to the surface. The girl scanned the sky, sniffed the air, then pointed to the west. There was a hollowed-out transport vehicle nearby, half covered in vines. Lucas and the girl climbed inside, shutting the metal door just as the dropship roared overhead through a crack in the wall. Lucas saw it land. Alien soldiers stepped out tall, in armor, their eyes cold and scanning. One of them pulled out a glowing tracker and turned toward the ruins. They were heading straight for them. Lucas checked his weapon, only 2 shots left. The girl growled beside him, crouched low like a shadow ready to strike. But Lucas noticed something strange. The area around his bite mark was glowing faint, like blue fire under the skin. The girl saw it too. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but recognition. She placed her claw on the mark, then looked up at him, whispering something. It sounded like a name, not his name but a title, a name passed down from her kind. A protector or a weapon. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the moment. He wasn't just caught in her fight anymore. He was part of it outside. The footsteps got closer, inside. Something awakened in his blood, whatever her bite had done. It was only beginning. Lucas was no longer sure what was real. He lay on the cold ground of the broken transport vehicle, eyes closed, heart racing. The alien girl slept near him, curled like a wolf pup, her body trembling from exhaustion. But Lucas couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of the whispers. They started after the ship flew away. Soft voices, not in English, not even from outside. They came from inside his mind. At first, they were just sounds, then words, then memories, but not his own. He saw forests with red trees under purple skies. He felt claws digging into soft earth. He heard howls that echoed across mountains made of crystal, and he felt a powerful pull, a call from somewhere far away. When he opened his eyes, it was still dark. The girl sat awake, staring at him silently. Her eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. "You hear them too?" Lucas asked. She nodded slowly, then placed her hand on his chest, right where his heart was. "Pack," she said, then tapped his temple. "Echo," then drew a circle in the air. "Memory," Lucas breathed, slowly, trying to understand. "You're saying I can hear your people." She didn't reply, but her silence was different this time, like she was waiting. That night, they made camp in an old bunker, deep underground. Lucas drifted off, finally exhausted. And again he dreamed. But this time, it wasn't a dream. It felt too real. He stood on a cliff under 3 moons. A great pack of wolf-like aliens stood before him. They bowed not to the girl, but to him. A tall female stepped forward, her fur silver and long, her eyes wise. She spoke in the same voice that had whispered. In his mind, "You carry her blood now," she said. "But you carry something older." She touched his forehead with her claw. "You are not her mate," she said. "You are her mirror." The dream shifted. He saw fire, cities falling, the girl screaming in chains, and him no longer human, howling at the sky with glowing eyes. Then the dream ended. Lucas woke with sweat on his face and steam rising from his skin. The girl was already standing, staring at him like she knew what he saw. She walked over, reached behind her neck, and unclipped a thin metal chain. At the end of it hung a small white tooth shaped like a fang. She placed it in his palm, then pressed her head against his shoulder. Eyes closed, Lucas didn't move. He understood somehow. This was not just a gift, it was a mark, a symbol of trust, maybe even a promise. But it also meant something else. He was no longer just human. The voices in his mind had opened a door, and now he couldn't close it. Later that day, they moved through the ruins together. The girl stopped at a large wall, cracked with vines. She pressed her hand against a strange symbol, one Lucas recognized from his dreams. The wall opened, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside were carvings, hundreds of them, images of packs, stars, ships, and battles. In the center was a single image, burned deep into the stone, a human hand holding the claw of a wolf. Lucas stared at it, heart pounding. This wasn't new. This was prophecy. The girl walked to the wall and pressed her forehead against the symbol. Then she turned to Lucas. "Lernaka," she said again, the word firm this time. Lucas stepped closer. "Is that what I am now?" he asked. "Lernaka," she looked into his eyes, then did something unexpected. She dropped to one knee, clawed hand over her heart. Lucas was stunned. "What are you doing?" She pointed to the carving again, then back to him. He wasn't just part of her story, he was the key. And the ancient voices agreed. They whispered louder now, not in fear but in hope. Lucas didn't know where this path would lead, but he knew one thing. He was no longer alone, and neither was she. Together, they had awakened something long lost. The pack was gone, but its echo was still alive inside them both. Lucas had stopped feeling human days ago. Now he felt like something more. Faster, stronger, and sharper, but also hungrier. Not for food, but for answers. They traveled together through shattered buildings and overgrown labs. The alien girl led into the far edge of the colony, where thick black vines covered everything. She pushed through the tangled mess with claws and strength that seemed to return by the hour. Lucas followed, the glowing mark on his arm pulsing faster now, like it was guiding him. Soon they reached a clearing, and there, buried beneath ashen roots, was a large metal door. It was circular, with faded alien symbols around its edge. The girl knelt beside it and placed her clawed hand on the center. Nothing happened. Lucas stepped forward, unsure. He reached out and placed his hand over the glowing part of his bite mark, then touched the door. It lit up instantly. Blue lines flashed through the metal like lightning. The door opened with a hiss. revealing a room below, dark, ancient, and full of stale air. They climbed down together. What they found inside didn't look like anything from Earth. Strange glowing pods lined the walls, alien weapons, sealed scrolls, and cracked helmets were scattered across the floor. At the center stood a pedestal with something pulsing on it, a smooth, red stone. It looked like a heart made of crystal. Lucas stepped closer, and it pulsed again. Then he heard it, a howl, not from outside, but from within. His mark glowed, then bled, just a little. One drop hit the stone, and everything changed. The stone burst with light, and a wave of energy shook the chamber. Symbols on the walls began to glow. The girl cried out and grabbed her head. Falling to her knees, Lucas caught her, but his own head now throbbed with noise. Whispers returned, louder than before, but they weren't just words. They were memories, not his, hers. He saw flashes her as a child, running through forest temples, training in the ancient arts of her kind, her parents tall and proud leading the pack. And then the burning, the betrayal, the ships that came with fire and metal. The day she lost everything. Lucas gasped as the images faded. The girl looked up at him, tears glowing in her eyes. Now he understood fully. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the last heir, and now, by blood. So was he. Suddenly, the room turned red. A deep alarm echoed through the chamber. The stone on the pedestal pulsed faster. Something had been triggered. Something had heard them above. A strange wind began to blow. The ground trembled. Lucas ran up the steps, pulling the girl with him. As they reached the surface, the sky cracked open. A massive alien ship descended, black as night. It wasn't like the others. It was older, ancient, built by her people, but it didn't look friendly. A deep voice boomed from above, speaking her language. The girl growled low and stepped in front of Lucas. She translated one word for him through clenched teeth. Traitor. The ship wasn't here to rescue. It was here to erase what remained. And Lucas had just lit the signal with his blood. Beams of red light shot down from the ship, scanning the ruins. Lucas grabbed the girl's hand. Run, he said. No more hiding underground. We fight this time. She didn't argue. Her eyes burned gold, her claws extended. They ran into the storm together, howling sirens above, growling power below. Whatever came next, they would face it as one, because now the signal was sent, and the last pack of two had just declared war. The sky behind them still burned red, but the deeper they ran into the forest, the quieter the world became. No drones followed, no ships overhead. Only wind through dying trees and the crunch of ash beneath their feet. Lucas was bleeding again. But he didn't stop. The girl led him through shadows like she knew this place in her bones. As the trees thinned, massive stone pillars rose from the ground. Half buried and cracked with age, strange symbols carved into them pulsed as they passed. A language not written, but felt. Then they saw it. A massive crater swallowed by vines and dust. At the center stood a ruined temple, tall, broken, and made from black bone-like stone. The girl stopped at the edge, her body trembling. Lucas looked at her. What is this place? She answered with one word, voice soft. Home. They entered the temple slowly. Inside, the air was cold, but alive. Lucas saw carvings of creatures like her standing proud with strange weapons and glowing eyes. At the center of the temple stood a round platform covered in bones, some large like bears, others small like humans. At its edge were markings that Lucas recognized from his dreams. The girl stepped forward, tears in her eyes. She dropped to her knees and touched the bones, whispering something that sounded like a prayer. Lucas didn't speak. He felt it too. A pressure in the air, like being watched, not by machines, but by the dead. Suddenly, the mark on his arm pulsed again. The temple responded. The floor glowed. Under his feet, symbols lighting in a spiral around him. The girl looked up in shock, then whispered, "It remembers you." Before Lucas could ask what she meant, the ground opened beneath him. He fell into darkness. He landed hard on stone, groaning. It was pitch black. Then a flame lit up, hovering in the air. And in front of him stood a figure. It looked like him, but older, sharper, with glowing eyes and claws. A twisted version of himself. The figure spoke in a voice that sounded like his own. "You carry her blood," it said. "But do you carry her burden?" The flame moved, revealing more bones. More memories, scenes of war, of betrayal, of a final battle in this very temple. The alien girl's family fighting to their last breath. Lucas saw her as a child, screaming as her mother fell. He felt her pain like it was his own. The voice echoed again. "Will you take what she cannot carry, or will you break under it?" Lucas stepped forward. "I will carry it," he said. "I already have." The flame rose high, and suddenly the darkness vanished. Lucas stood once more in the temple. The girl ran to him, eyes wide with relief. But something was different. Lucas's eyes now glowed faint gold. His senses felt sharper. The bones around him whispered, but no longer in fear. They whispered in recognition. The girl stepped back and bowed. "Not from weakness, but from honor. You passed the trial," she said. Lucas nodded. "Now what?" he asked. She looked toward the back of the temple. "There's one thing left." They moved together into the inner chamber. There, resting on an ancient altar, was a blade, long, curved, and black as space. It wasn't just a weapon, it was alive, the last relic of her pack. Lucas stepped forward and picked it up. The blade pulsed with heat and memory. Images flooded his mind, not just of war, but of legacy, the bond between leader and protector. Between Wolf and human. Suddenly, the temple shook. The ground above cracked. A voice boomed from outside. "Give her up," it demanded, "or be buried with her." Lucas looked at the girl. She met his eyes. No fear in her face. He gripped the blade tightly. "No," he whispered. "We've buried enough." Then together, they stepped out into the light, no longer prey, but the last of a dying legacy, and now ready to make it howl again. The storm came fast. Not rain, not wind. Flames fell from the sky like arrows, burning through trees and stone. The temple behind them groaned and cracked. Lucas and the alien Wolf girl stood at its broken gate, blades in hand, hearts racing. The enemy ship hovered just above. And then they came, dozens of them, soldiers in dark armor with red visors and strange weapons, but they didn't charge. They stepped aside, making room for one. He was tall, covered in ancient bone armor, his face hidden behind a metal wolf mask. The girl growled low, eyes blazing. Lucas looked at her. "Who is that?" She spat one word. "Draka, her uncle, once guardian of her pack, now the one who betrayed them." Draka stepped forward, his voice calm but cold. "You would stand beside a human, niece." She said nothing. Draka turned his gaze to Lucas. "Do you even know what she is?" Lucas didn't blink. "I know what she's not," he said. "She's not a traitor," Draka chuckled darkly. "No, but you are now part of her curse." He raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Before Lucas could react, the ground beneath him gave way, a trap. The earth opened, and he dropped into blackness. He awoke in a circle of stone, lit by a pale blue fire. Chains wrapped around his arms and legs, not physical, but made of light. Voices echoed all around him. Not soldiers, not enemies, but ancient spirits. The pack, he saw them, ghosts of her people, circling him silently. Their eyes judged. Their voices tested. "Do you carry the blood?" one asked. "Yes," Lucas replied. "Do you carry the weight?" another said. "Yes," he answered again. "Then show us," said a third. "Prove the wolf lives in you." And then the pain began. His body burned, bones stretching, senses sharpening. He screamed, not from pain, but from change. Claws grew from his hands. His eyes turned silver. His heart split in two, one beat human, one beat wild. Then both became one. He stood, the chains of light breaking apart. The ghosts stepped back, their heads bowed. "You are no longer outsider," they whispered. "You are Alpha now." Lucas blinked. The chamber around him faded. He was back on the surface, standing face to face with Draka. The girl stood beside him, her blade drawn, her eyes proud. Draka stared at Lucas with surprise. "You survived the trial," he said. Lucas stepped forward, voice deeper. "I didn't just survive," he growled. "I became," Draka raised his weapon, and the sky split with thunder. The battle began. Lucas moved like lightning, blade clashing with Draka's. Their howls shook the ground. The girl fought beside him, dancing through fire and steel like wind and shadow. Soldiers fell around them, but the real fight was between Alpha and Betrayer. Draka was strong, fast, brutal, but Lucas was something else. He wasn't just fighting for her. He was fighting as her. Their bond was complete. Two souls, one rhythm. Finally, Lucas broke Draka's mask. Behind it, a face of guilt and rage. Lucas could have ended it, but he didn't. He turned his back. "The pack doesn't kill its own," he said. Draka, humiliated, fled into the forest howling in defeat. The sky grew calm again. The fire faded. The temple stood quiet. Lucas dropped his blade. The girl walked up to him and touched his face. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. He had passed the Alpha's trial, and now he was one of them. Not by blood, but by bond. Not by bite, but by choice. Together, they looked toward the stars, because the war wasn't over. But for the first time, they had hope. The stars above them no longer felt silent. They pulsed, they whispered, they called. Lucas stood at the edge of the ruined temple, wind pulling at his clothes. Behind him, the girl, no longer hiding in shadows, stood tall beside him, her scars now symbols, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The enemy ship was gone. Draka was in exile. The mercenaries scattered, but peace didn't feel like the end. It felt like the start of something bigger. Lucas could hear it again, the whispers in his blood. The memories not his own, but this time, they weren't of the past. They were of the stars, of places beyond Earth, of packs that had survived, sleeping, hiding, waiting. The girl placed her hand on the ancient blade, now resting in the center of the temple. A light shone from it, bright, steady, and rising into the sky. A signal, but not one of distress, one of return. Lucas turned to her. "You're not the last, are you?" She shook her head slowly. "Not anymore," she said, then pointed upward. He followed her gaze, and there in the far sky, he saw it. A constellation shaped like a wolf's head, pulsing once, twice, then disappearing. The girl stepped closer, placing the old fang pendant around his neck. "You were the last of your kind," she whispered. "Now you are the first of mine." Lucas didn't reply. He just nodded, because he finally understood. Bond they shared had awakened something cosmic, something that went beyond planets and bloodlines. It was instinct, pack, purpose. A ship waited for them nearby, an ancient vessel hidden beneath the roots of the temple, once used by her people to cross galaxies, now humming back to life as if it had been waiting for him. Lucas looked back at the ruins one last time, the place where he was bitten, where he bled, where he changed, and where he chose not just to help but to become. He stepped onto the ship, the girl beside him. The engines warmed with a sound like thunder held in a cage, and then the ship rose, through smoke, through clouds, and into stars. As they passed into orbit, Lucas looked down at the dead world, not with sadness, but with understanding. This world had buried her past, but it had also planted a new future, one not of survival, but of rebirth. He took the pilot seat. The girl beside him whispered something in her native tongue. He didn't need a translator. The bond translated everything now. She smiled. He smiled back. Then together they howled, a low, powerful sound that echoed through the ship. And maybe, if someone had been listening from far enough away, they would have heard it too. A sound not of fear, but of a pack coming home.